A One Piece game where you can create your own character, create and join your own crew, and explore and fight on the seas of the One Piece world. That would be the perfect One Piece game for me. What's good, YouTube? Ronnie here, and today I'm going to dive deep into the character creation of my dream One Piece game. In my last video, I pretty much just summarized an idea of what this game would be like, but for timing and editing purposes, I didn't dive super deep into any of the game features. Instead, I'm going to split each of the game features and mechanics into multiple videos so I can truly dive deep into everything that will be in this game. Now, character creation always has mixed opinions. Like, I feel like most people enjoy creating their own character in video games, but I know that there are some people out there that actually enjoy the game more when they're given an already made character to work with. But I feel like to truly have the greatest experience in a game like this, you need to be able to create your own character. I don't want to play Luffy's story, I don't want to play Ace's story, I want to play my story. So, without further ado, let's get into the character creation in the perfect One Piece game. So, like I said in my last video, in this game's character creation studio, you will be able to choose a race, faction, and which of the 4 blue seas your character spawns in. So let's take a deep dive into each of those categories, starting with your character's race. So obviously the first race you could pick from would be humans. Unlike most series, there are multiple types of humans in the One Piece world. You have regular humans, long-limbed humans such as long-arm tribe people, long-leg tribe people, even long-neck tribe people. You also just have straight up large humans such as Whitebeard and Katakuri, who are like 20 feet and 16 feet respectively. As a matter of fact, the maximum character height difference in this game would be pretty huge, with the shortest height you can be in the game would be 5 foot even, and the tallest height you can be is actually 16 feet tall like Katakuri is. This applies for every race. While you can set the base overall height for your character, there will also be character limb sliders like Arc Survival, but even more wacky. One Piece is full of wacky looking characters, and I want to see what kind of crazy designs players can come up with. Just like Dragon Ball's universe, each race will have pros and cons, mainly in terms of their base stats. The 6 types of stats in this game will be max health, max stamina, max melee attack, max defense, max super attack, and max ranged attack, with each race having an advantage in one area and having a disadvantage in another. As for humans, just like the humans in Dragon Ball's universe, they will have balanced stats all the way around. And that would pretty much be their disadvantage because they don't really have an advantage in any other stat category, and they don't really have a special ability like the other races do. But what they would have is an easier time learning Haki. What I mean by this is that they would probably just learn Haki at a lower level than other races. They will also have a higher chance of obtaining Conqueror's Haki compared to other races. My reasoning for this is because majority of Conqueror's Haki users are actually human, so I feel like that's fair given the disadvantage that they have. Moving on to fishmen. So the special thing about fishmen is that unlike every other race, they can breathe underwater. And when majority of the map is covered in water, that's a pretty good advantage. When fishmen players get underwater, their attack and movement speed will be amped. And also, if a fishmen player ate a devil fruit, they would still be able to breathe underwater. They just couldn't move, just like Jack could. There will be multiple types of fishmen. You have the sharks, the octopus, the stingrays, and like the regular fish. It's not really much difference between any of the types besides the octopus having like 8 arms. Other than that, it's not really much difference. You can't even really tell which fishman is what unless Oda tells you or the book tells you. Fishmen will have a high base melee attack and high base stamina. They will also have a low base health and low base super attack. Moving on to sky people. Sky people will start on the Sky Island in the blue sea of their choosing. Their character will have wings, but they couldn't fly, but they will fall slowly compared to other players. Think of it as always having a parachute when you fall, but slightly faster than that. There is 3 types of sky people. You have the Skypians, the Shandorians, and the Birkins. And the only difference really is the wings, but I do know the Shandorians are like a tribal kind of people, so I guess that can factor into that. Maybe you can have the tribal markings. Sky people will also have almost immediate access to dials and waivers, like probably after the tutorial they have access to this stuff. I plan on doing a video on key items and gear for this game later, so for now I'll just say dials are shells that store energy which can be used for different things. As for stats, Sky people will have a high base ranged attack and a high base health. They will also have a low base melee attack and a low base defense. And finally, minks. So minks are pretty much just furries, like that's literally what they are. There will be different types of minks you could choose from, and what I mean by that is like the different kinds of animals they can be. You can also customize those types in order to look like a different type of animal. So what I mean by that is like, so if you pick like a dog mink, but you want to customize it to look more like a fox, or let's say you pick a horse mink type, but instead you want it to look like a zebra, so you could kind of just like play with that. Minks will also be able to obtain the electro ability. Electro is an ability that allows minks to produce electricity from their bodies and shock opponents. It will most likely just shock and stun opponents in the game. Minks will also have access to Sulong form. So Sulong basically would work how it does in this series. There would be a day and night system in the game, and on certain nights there would be a full moon, and mink players on the full moon nights can access Sulong form. Now, lower level mink players will be uncontrollable. What I mean by this is that when your character turns to a mink, yeah, you'll be strong and you'll be doing a bunch of crazy stuff, but you won't really be able to control your character. You'll be able to control the direction they're going in, but you won't be able to control what attacks they're using and stuff like that. It will just be like a raging beast. Now, higher levels will be able to completely control their character, so you better use all the attacks and everything with it. As for stats, minks will have a high base defense and a high base super attack. They will have a low base range attack and a low base stamina. And those will be the 4 main races your character could be in this game. Yes, I'm fully aware that there are more races in the series, such as Tauntaunters and Giants. But these are the 4 main races who not only have been the most prevalent and fleshed out in the series, but they're also the only ones that make sense gameplay wise. Tauntaunters are way too small and Giants are way too big. Could you imagine trying to fight a Tauntaunter with the power of the Magu Magu no Mi? Yeah, that would suck. So it's a no for me. Moving on to the factions. So just like there are 4 races in the game, there will be 4 factions in the game. Obviously starting with pirates. As a pirate, you could create or join your own pirate crew. You could design your own flag and Jolly Roger, you could pick out the colors, even design the ship. And as for the Jolly Roger, you could even design that outside of the game and can put it inside the game like images on 2K. You could also earn a bounty which would increase when you commit crimes or beat other pirates. You could decide to kill and rob innocents or help others, like Luffy does. You could also even have an epithet, so like straw hat, red hair, black leg, etc. This will probably be done in the character creation studio rather than, being outside like or given to you like how the Navy usually does to characters in the series. Just because like how would you have the Navy name you, like Navy players name another player? It could get real immature real quick. So instead you could just create your own nickname or epithet in the character creation studio, and when you become a big pirate, your nickname will be shown in the newspapers or the news feed or whatever. Each player on a pirate crew will be given a role. The first role obviously being captain. This player will be the leader of the crew and will always have the highest bounty in the crew, just because everything that your subordinates do kind of reflects off on the captain. It will be up to you to lead your crew to success and victory. You would come up with the crew name, you would design your own Jolly Roger, you would add members to your crew, and you can even kick members out, and you can also even disband the crew. Next is the vice captain or the first mate. This player is the second in command of the ship. They can request to have new members join, but captain gets the final say. So the next role will be the navigator / helmsman. So these are actually 2 separate types of roles inside the series, but for this game purposes, I think they kind of work in conjunction with each other. So they essentially will be the same thing. So you would steer the ship, usually. Anyone can steer the ship, but usually you will be the one to steer the ship. Navigators will have a world map in comparison to the other players who have only the mini map where they can only see what they can see on the mini map. Navigators will be able to see the entire world, but the map wouldn't be cleared out, but they will be able to clear out the map. So it kind of gives navigators a bigger purpose because they literally have to navigate people in order to tell them where to go, because everyone else can't really tell where to go. You will also have access to a log post. So in this game, that would pretty much just point you in the direction of the closest island to you and your crew. Next is the crew sniper. So the crew sniper will have a gun-slinging fighting style. So that consists of double flintlock pistols, rifles, or slingshots. They will also be the naval battle leader. So during naval battles with cannons and stuff, they will lead the crew in that. They will be the ones firing the cannons because they have the most range and everything. So they will lead in those fights. Snipers will also be able to repair and upgrade the crew members' ranged weapons, such as the flintlock pistols and shotguns and stuff like that. They will also have a pair of binoculars so they can see further. Next are cooks. So in this game, every player will have a hunger bar. You will need to fill this hunger bar with food in order to survive. Crew cooks will cook food for the crew members. Not only will cooked food fill bellies, but it can also provide boost in health and stamina, and even attack and speed and all that stuff. While cooking, there will be like a cooking mini game that's like, think about other games that we've seen that have like a cooking aspect to it, and that will be like a mini game that the cooks will have to play. And if they do good in the mini game, then the food comes out good. And if they do bad, then the food comes out bad. Doctors will be similar to cooks in which they have to provide a service in order to maintain the health of the crew. By collecting healing items and herbs, doctors will be able to create medicine in order to heal the crew and cure them from poisons or other side effects. There will also be like a medicine making mini game similar to that of the cooking mini game that the cooks will have. Speaking of cooks, doctors will be able to provide cooks with medicine as ingredients to cook food with, which can also give players even better stat boosts. Doctors will also be able to heal the fallen crew members on the battlefield. So when players lose their health in this game, they wouldn't die immediately. They would fall down like a Fortnite character and could be healed and picked up by a doctor. Sure, any crew member could pick them up, but a doctor would heal them as they picked them up. Moving on to shipwrights. Shipwrights will gather materials in order to build and repair the cruise ship. Now, in order to build the ship that the captain wants, the shipwright will build a base for the ship. The captain would then click on and enter a design mode where they pretty much design the ship the way they want. But what they're really doing is just creating the blueprint for the shipwright. And once the captain is done designing the shipwright would start the automatic process of building the ship. This will probably take a couple seconds, and then the ship will be designed. So pretty much all blacksmiths will do is gather materials in order to forge melee weapons for the crew. They will also be able to customize the design of each of the weapons. Moving on to the archaeologists. The only thing archaeologists could do is interact with poneglyphs. So poneglyphs in this game will spawn in the map and will function much differently than they do in the actual series. Instead of having secrets about the void century, they will provide hints of where certain treasures such as devil fruits, weapons, and other gear are located. Archaeologists will also be alerted when they are near a poneglyph. In the final row, combatants. So combatants will just be players who are just there just to fight. And yes, anyone on the crew could technically fight, but these are for everybody else on the crew who aren't in the main row, since the main row is limited to just 1 or 2 people. Moving on to the next faction, Marines. So the Marine faction will be somewhat the exact opposite of the Pirate faction. While being a pirate pretty much allows you to have the free will to do what you want and pick and choose the role on the crew that you want to be on, or even start your own crew, Marine players will be assigned to certain ships and certain players to work under, kind of like a job. So it's kind of like a freedom versus order thing, which is kind of like the duality of the two factions in the actual series. In the series, there are 19 different Marine ranks split into 9 different tiers. So for this game, I'll just be combining entire tiers into ranks. And I'll also be removing 2 ranks, those being Chore Boy and Fleet Admiral. You can't really gain any experience points by cleaning, so Chore Boy wouldn't work. Also, it would be a really boring start to the game. Fleet Admiral also wouldn't work in my opinion because it's too powerful of a position to just give to one player. So yeah, that leaves us with just 7 total ranks a Marine player could reach. Starting with Seaman's Recruit. The Seaman Recruits are pretty much the weak soldiers you see in the series, like those fodder Marine soldiers that we see that the Straw Hats run through all the time. So yeah, that's like the lowest level in the game. You're probably going to lose a lot of your early fights against pirates and even against other Marines. You will be wearing the basic Marine outfit. Your character would most likely be between levels 1 to level 10. Moving up the rank would be Petty Officers. They're definitely stronger than the Seaman's Recruit, but they're still pretty mid. At this point, you can now wear different clothing and accessories, but they can only be blue and white. Your character is most likely between the levels of 10 and 25 at this point. Next is Warrant Officer. We actually haven't seen a Warrant Officer in the entirety of the series, but at this point, you are now an official Marine Officer. You will have some light authority over lower ranking Marines and the Marine NPCs. At this point in your Marine career, you start learning Rokushiki, and your character is most likely between the levels of 25 and 35. Moving up to a pretty big jump in power, the Marine Lieutenant. Marine Lieutenants are the second in command of a Marine ship, sort of like how the Vice Captains are the second in command of pirate ships. Every rank below this would take the role similar to that of a pirate crew. There would be a Marine Cook, a Marine Doctor, a Marine Navigator, etc. So those are like the Warrant Officers and the Seaman's Recruits and stuff like that. They all take those kind of roles on the Marine ship. At the Lieutenant rank, that's when you get your Justice Code, and your character would most likely be between the levels of 35 and 50 at this point. Moving on to Marine Captains. So Marine Captains will be able to captain their own ship just like a captain of a pirate ship. You will have a crew comprised of lower ranked Marine players who take on roles. Your ship can be customized to your own liking, but it would still have to have like the Marine logo and everything on it. At this point, you should have learned some observation and maybe even some armament hockey. Your character would most likely be in between the levels of 50 and 65. Vice Admirals would be just like captains, except they would be stronger, they would have bigger ships, and they would have a larger crew. They should definitely know both types of hockey, and at this point master all Rokushiki techniques. They could also initiate buster calls. So every Marine player, Vice Admiral and up, could initiate a buster call once every month. The way a buster call works is that a player can initiate it on the island that they're on. The call signals all Marine players in the server and urges them to come to that island. The objective of the buster call is to kill all non-Marine players on the island. By this point, your character should be at level 65 to 85. And finally, the highest rank a Marine player will be able to reach in the game, the Admiral level. So the top 3 Marine players in your region would be considered the 3 Admirals. Marine ranks will be based on a point system, kind of like bounties for pirates. The 3 players with the highest amount of points become the Admirals. Now, a Vice Admiral could challenge an Admiral for their spot if they have enough points to do so. Admirals lead their own ship and crew just like captains. Admirals will most likely know advanced hockey. They can also issue buster calls, obviously, and your character would most likely be in between the levels of 85 and 100, which is the max level. To increase your rank, you will have to defeat pirates and either kill or capture them and turn them into HQ. Moving on to the Revolutionary Army. Being a part of the Revolutionary Army will make you become an underling of Monkey D. Dragon. You would do missions assigned by him. There wouldn't be any ranks for the Revolutionary Army. The only thing we know about them is that they have the commanders of each of the blues. And since those are all single person commanding spots, it becomes another fleet admiral issue. Your main goal will be to overthrow the world government or just sabotage their missions and start wars with them. You will be tasked to destroy government strongholds and even do raids on Marine bases. You will also be assigned missions to go help out people who are getting attacked by Marines, or help out a country who are being corrupted by Marines or something like that. So pretty much the faction is pretty much just saving the world and just doing missions. And for the last faction, Bounty Hunters. It's a pretty straightforward faction. You just catch pirates and claim their bounties. It's a pretty neutral position. Now there isn't really a canon ranking system in the series for Bounty Hunters because they aren't really that elaborated on. So I kind of made up my own ranking system for Bounty Hunters. It's similar to that of the Naruto ranking system, in which is put into classes from ranks D to S. So D rank being rookie level, C rank being amateur level, B rank being supernova level, A rank being Yonko commander level, and S rank being Yonko level. You will also be able to establish your own bounty hunting crew and hunt for pirates as a group and split the money for their capture. And those will be the 4 factions of the game. Moving on to the Sea of Origin. So like I said in my first video, each of the 4 blues will have a different difficulty for players starting out. The more difficult the sea, the better the gear you can find early in the game. So how would I rank each of the blues from least difficulty to the hardest? Well, let's start with the easiest, East Blue. East Blue was confirmed to be the easiest sea from Mihawk himself, well, pretty much Oda. The cool thing about East Blue is that it will have a bunch of notable islands that we know, such as Fuchsia Village, the Konomi Islands, the Barate, and Syrup Village. It will have the least challenging enemies to fight there early in game, but starting in East Blue kind of lessens your chances of getting some good gear early in the game. Second to weakest is the South Blue. Notable locations of South Blue consist of Batarilla, the island that Ace was born on, the Black Drum Kingdom, and the Torino Kingdom, the place where Chopper stayed at during the 2-year time skip. Now I don't think it's the second weakest sea just because of the people who are from there. It's more so because the people who are from the West and North Blue. So it's pretty much in the middle there. You know, it's the second to weakest, so it's a little bit more challenging than the East Blue, but it isn't as hard as the other 2. Moving on to the West Blue. So I think the West Blue is the second strongest sea. Notable locations consist of Ruins of Ohara and Thriller Bark. Just listen to those names and you can understand why I think those are 2 of the harder seas, because you have the huge pirate ship Thriller Bark, which was like a late game area that Luffy and the gang went to, and the Ruins of Ohara, which is a place that had to be buster called to death. So West Blue will be the second strongest sea, and obviously more challenging than the South Blue, but not as hard as the North Blue. Speaking of the North Blue, that will be the most challenging sea in the game, mainly because of the people who actually come from there. You have 2 admirals, 6 Yonko commanders, 3 supernova, the Doflamingo family, German 66, and even more than that. So it's pretty easy to see why this would be the most challenging sea. Notable locations consist of the German Kingdom and Flaviance, the island that Law was born on. This would be the most challenging sea to start in the game, but you can find some of the best gear to start early in the game with. And that will be the character creation in my dream One Piece game. Come back next time where I go into a deep dive talking about the fighting styles and ships that will be in this game. Remember to like the video if you liked the video, or dislike the video if you disliked the video. Also go ahead and subscribe if you like the content so far. I'm Ronnie, and this has been Perfect Anime Games. Peace.